placed in the chat for you so that you can see that and download it. And if not, you can access it. It's also on the share file. You can access directly from the share file link as well. It has lots of information, and I think it'll help address some of the things that might be popping up in your head right now. So I highly encourage you to look at that. So now we're doing an overview of the portal itself. So first of all the application types have some features in common. They all will have a waiting tab. The waiting tab is where you say who are the eligible teaching assignments that you want to include, what are the student growth measures that you plan to use for those respective teaching assignments, what weight do you want to put on the teacher observation part versus the student growth part, etc. So they all have a waiting tab. They all have this feature of unlocking. Certain tabs will unlock other tabs. The idea behind that is that we don't want districts to have to complete tabs that aren't relevant to them. So if you're not using, for example, SLOs, then the SLO tab will be locked. You don't even have to touch it. In fact, you can't touch it even if you wanted to, unless you're using it. It just makes it a little simpler. So they all have that unlocking feature that certain tabs will unlock. Other tabs, pre-populated tabs, all the information you put in your waiting tab will pre-populate other tabs. I'm going to demo that for you shortly, and that's really helpful so you don't have to enter information twice. So they all have in common that pre-populated feature, and they also have in common the student growth measure tab where you only have to complete the student growth measures that you're actually using. So that's in common for all of them. So quick view, depending on the application type, certain tabs kind of are the control house of the whole application. So for a new application, it's the waiting tab. The waiting tab unlocks all of the student growth tabs. In this case, this district are including Algebra 1, English 1, English 2, Biology, and U.S. History. They're using t-test at 45%. They're using a pretest post-test system, which will be a district-created pretest, district-created growth targets, and end-of-year star that cut off. But end of your star is what they're using. So in this example, all the other text SLO will be locked, portfolio will be locked, and value-added measure will be locked, because in this example, they're only using pretest post-test. So that's the only tab that will unlock, and that's the only tab that they have to fill out in terms of student growth. For expansion modification applications, it's a little bit different. What unlocks everything is the expansion modification tab itself, not the waiting tab. For expansion modification tabs, I know many of you may be not there yet, but hopefully eventually, if you're new, you'll be expanding next year or the year after that or year after that. So this hopefully will still be relevant for you, even if you're not expanding in this year. And this is where you tell us what you want to change. What do you want to expand? What do you want to modify? And based on what you say on this tab, that will unlock the tabs that you need to complete. And I will be showing you a demonstration of this in just a moment. And then finally, for the renewal application, what unlocks is still a waiting tab. However, there's a renewal tab that's required, and that's where you explain to us how you've used your data, what you want to change, how you want to expand, what's your plan for continuous improvement after having done this for 5 years looking back. What does your data tell you that you might want to change or fix or adjust? So we will be walking through what that looks like as well. So now we're going to move to a tour of the online portal itself. This is very exciting. So the waiting tab is the first one we're going to talk about. And the waiting tab has several bits of important information on it. First, it has your teacher categories. Which teacher categories are you going to include? It also has your teacher observation rubric and the weights that you want to assign to that teacher observation rubric. You will also let us know which student growth measures you want to use at which % weight for all the categories that you include. And finally, there's an optional components tab that you can use if you want, and the weights you assign to that. We're going to go through each one of these one by one to make sure we're really clear on how important that weighting tab is. We'll start off with the teacher category piece. So the definition of teacher category is the group of eligible teaching assignments that have two things in common. They're using the same teacher observation rubric, say it's t-tests, at the same weight, and they're using the same student growth measure at the same weight, including using the same test. So you can combine teaching assignments into the same category if they're all using the same test, they're all using MAP, they're all using STAR, those can all go together. Even though math is different than reading, you can combine them into the same category if they're using that same assessment. If they're using different assessments, they cannot be combined into the same category. So we're going to practice this. This is an example. I want you to think, you don't have to do anything. It's not a post, it's a practice one. Just think in your head, is this a correct example of teaching categories? In this example, this district has 6 teaching categories: first through third grade reading, first through third grade math, fourth and fifth reading, fourth and fifth math, second through fifth science, and sixth through eighth science. And you can see the teacher observation, they're using t-tests. At the weight, they're using it 60%. They're using a pre-test post-test system, MAP, and that's 40%. So I want you to look at this and remember the definition is you can combine them if they have the same teacher observation rubric at the same weight and the same pre-test post-test at the same weight. So is this or is this not a correct way to do a weighting tab? So I want you to just think about that for a second. Think of your answer in your head. You don't have to do anything. Just think about it. Hopefully, if you said no, you are correct. This is not correct because all of these are using t-tests at 60% and they're all using MAP at 40%. It should look like this. They should all be the same because that definition says if they're using the same teacher observation rubric at the same weight, with the same assessment at the same weight, they can be combined. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to try another one, it's a little bit different. Tell me if this one, how many should there be? So this district turned in an application. They had 6 categories. This one I want you to do on your own. I'm going to do a poll. So they have first through third reading, all the way down through sixth through eighth math. You can see what rubric they're using at what weight. You can see what assessment they're using at what weight. How many teaching categories should this be? And I'll give you a hint. It's not 6. So give her a second, read it, think about it. How many teaching categories should this be? Okay, some results coming in. Great. Keep them coming. We'll let it open for another few seconds so we can get people have a chance. All right, last call. I'll give you the last 2 more seconds and then we'll end the poll. Looks like we got about 75% of the people. All right, let's see how we did. All right, the vast majority of you said 4 is the correct answer, and that is correct. There should be 4, and this is why. The first 3 can be combined together because they're all using t-test at 60 and they're all using MAP at 40. Notice this next one, they're using a different assessment. They cannot be combined. That has to be a separate one because it's using a separate test. Same with this one, they're using iReady, different test, different category, and finally this one, different test, different category. So the lesson here is combine things that are combinable and don't combine things that can't be combined. Basically, in a nutshell, that's what we have here. So this is what it would look like on the weighting tab itself. First through fifth reading and first through third math using t-test at 60%. This is the one that we're using the MAP growth targets, and the post-test was also MAP. And this is what it would look like on the tab. And I'm going to take you there right now to show you what it looks like on the actual weighting tab. So here's a testing district 2. Your district will say at the top of this, your name. This is the actual portal. You'll see this tomorrow. I'm using a testing district. And by the way, sometimes testing districts logs me out and I have to log back in. That's not a problem. We'll see that happening now and then. It's not a problem. So this is what it would look like. First to third reading in math and first through third math. That's the one that was using MAP. Then down here we have fourth through fifth math. They were the one that was using the Renaissance Star as a pretest, the Renaissance Star growth targets, and the Renaissance Star post-test. Then we had the 6 through 8 ELAR. They were using t-test at 60%, but they were using the iStation as their pretest and post-test. And finally, we had 6 through 8 math and using t-test at 60 and using iReady as the pre and iReady as the post. So we're going to practice adding a new teaching assignment. So hopefully that makes sense about how you can combine and not combine. We're going to practice adding a new one. Let's say they want to also add a new category. So I'm going to click and show you what that looks like. I'm going to add new category. And I'm going to add, let me save this. And I'm going to add a new category. Oh, I have to log out. This makes me do this every time. That's okay. This is going to happen to you too, because then you can log in and you can see whatever you need to see. Okay, I'm going to take my friend testing district 2. Just give me one moment. Again, you won't see any of this. You're only going to see your district. This is just for demonstration purposes, so I can show you what it looks like when you will see it. So just get me to testing district 2. There's our friend. Okay, testing district 2. So here's the waiting tab, like I just said, it's all still there. It's so reassuring. You called back up and it's still there. It didn't go away. I always do a little happy dance just to make sure. I got logged out. You people panic. Don't panic. It's still there. It's fine. It's going to be fine. So now I'm going to add a new teaching category. And I want to add Algebra 1, and I'm going to add English 1. Okay, so this one's going to use t-tests, but they want to add it at 50%. So this group of teachers, they did a lot of stakeholder engagement. They want it to be 50-50. And that's important. You don't have to have everything be the same. Each category can be different. So 6th to 8 math, they want 60% t-test and 40% of iReady. But for Algebra 1 and English 1, they want it to be 50-50. They're going to use a pre-test, post-test system. This is where you see the drop-down. You can select all these different kinds of pre-tests. In this case, they want to use the previous year's star as the pre-test. So it would be their 8th grade math or their 8th grade English is their pre-test. The growth targets, they want to use star transition tables. So I'm going to select star transition tables. And the post-test is going to be the actual end of year star. So I'm going to click end of year star. And now I have to do the weight for what I want my transition tables to count for. So I'm going to pick 50% for that. Notice how it says 100%, so I did it right. And then I'm going to save that. And now we have a new teacher category. And you can keep on going. You can add as many more eligible teaching categories as you need. So hopefully that made sense for how to add new eligible teaching categories. So we're going to go back to our deck right now. And wait. Okay, so along with the teaching categories and the assessment, there's other things on the weighting tab too. So one of the pieces you have to select, in this example, I selected t-test, but there are many observation rubrics that you can choose to use. You can use t-test, you can use a Danielson, you can use Marzano, an IET TAP, those are all automatically approved. Or some districts have their own district created rubric, which is also fine. You just have to make sure that it aligns to statute. So if you do want to use a district created rubric, you would need to submit a district rubric crosswalk where you can show us how your district created rubric aligns to statute, and that crosswalk is good to go. So if you want more information about that, please email the TIA inbox and they can give you information about that crosswalk. But any of these first 4 are automatically all pre-approved and you don't have to do anything extra. So that information you'll let us know on the weighting tab. You also will let us know which student growth measure options you want to use. So you can use many. There's a pre-test, post-test options. The example I used so far were ones that use tests, but you can use other things. There's also lots of different ways to use pre-test, post-test. You can use a test that comes with growth targets as part of the test, like the star transition table. That's growth target that's given to you. MAP has growth targets. Renaissance Star has many tests do. Some tests don't. They have a pre-test and a post-test, but they don't set growth targets as part of the test. Great examples of that would be Circle for pre-K, which has a pre-test and post-test, but they don't set growth targets. Or Texkia for kindergarten, same thing. They have a pre-test, post-test, they don't set growth targets. You would have to set those growth targets locally. If you want information about how to set expected growth targets, there's lots of information on the share file. There's a whole session about how to do that led by one of our team members, Frank. It gives you lots of examples of how to set growth targets locally if that's something that you want to do. You also can use student learning objectives. It's a different growth measure, not a test. This is based on a body of evidence of student work. Some districts want to use student work. What are they actually doing? And use that in lieu of a test. You can do that if you want to do that, as long as it aligns to the Texas SLO system. This is, by the way, a live link. When you get this deck, all this is linked, or you can just Google Texas SLOs. It's a great way to use a body of evidence of student work to measure growth instead of using a test to use student growth. So that's an option for you. Same with portfolios. You can also use portfolios. Those were great, especially with our performance-based courses. And there's lots of information about how to do portfolios and sample portfolios on this link here. Or you could use VAM, value added measures, and we now have statewide VAM available. Lots of resources about how to do that if you want to look into doing that. And again, the link is there for you to log on, learn about how to use that statewide VAM. So you have lots of options you can choose. Different teacher categories can use different growth measures depending on what makes the most sense for their content area. That would be a local decision. And finally, there's optional components. So optional components can be things that districts want to include. They have to include student growth and they have to include teacher observation. Those are statutorily required. They can include other things if districts want to. Some districts want to include other things, some districts don't. That's up to you. So some examples, some districts that are choosing to use optional components in their system are student surveys, family surveys. Some districts have certain professional development requirements that they want to include as part of their system. Several districts actually use domains 1 and 4 of t-tests because what you're going to report for your data in terms of teacher observation data are the observable domains of t-tests, which are domains 2 and 3. So some districts decide, well, you know what, I want to include domains 1 and 4 as my optional thing. Domain 1 is mostly about planning and domain 4 is professional development. You can do that. Some districts use teacher attendance. These are all optional, just examples. One quick note on the student survey. There is a statewide pilot for a survey that we want to be able to provide a statewide student survey for districts that want to use it. And so it's going to be piloted this spring. If your district is interested in being part of that pilot for how to pilot a student survey, you can still do that if you want to. The deadline's January 31st, so you have about 2 weeks. Email the TII inbox if you would like, and we can get you information on how you can pilot a student survey if you're interested in doing that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the eligible teacher tab. So we're going to go back to our friend testing district 2, and hopefully it won't make me log in again. Let's see. You can see everything is still here on our waiting tab, all the ones that we already did, including the new one that we just added, Algebra 1 and English 1. So I'm going to go to the eligible teacher tab. And you can see it's already populated all these categories. Category 1, 1st through 5th reading and 1st through 3rd math. 4th and 5th math, all of the ones that were on the waiting tab are now automatically pre-populated on this eligible teacher tab, including the new one we just added that had Algebra 1 and English 1. So now what you need to do on this tab is select the service ID that matches up with these teaching areas. So there are a lot of service IDs out there, y'all. It's a big state. So not every single district offers every single service ID. What initially pops up is every single service ID in the whole state, including things that you may not have even known about, like acting for the camera. Maybe your district doesn't offer acting for the camera. Some district out there does because it's on there. But what you need to do is select the ones that you're actually using. So what we're going to do is use the filter feature here, and you can filter these so you don't have to sort through the entire state of Texas, every single service ID that exists. You could do that if you wanted to, but a much better idea would be to filter it. So you can filter it by, I'm going to start with 1. We're doing reading and ELAR. So I'm going to filter by subject, and I'm going to pick English Language Arts, and I'm going to apply. So now you can see it only has English Language Arts related service IDs. But it has a lot of high school stuff like broadcast journalism and literary magazine. And my category 1 is 1st through 5th grade reading. I don't want to sort through all that high school stuff right now for this category because it's not relevant. So I'm going to go back to my filter button and I'm going to add grade level because I only want 1st through 5th grade. That's all category 1 is 1st through 5th grade. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to collect 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, apply. And so now all I see are English Language Arts that are relevant to this area. It does include some that are English as a second language. So right now, that's not part of my category 1. That might be category 6 later, but I don't want to select those. I want to select just English Language Arts and Reading grade 1. That's part of category 1, category 1, category 1, category 1. So I selected those as my category 1 because that is my category 1, and I'm done. Now, one thing that would be really helpful to do, I'm going to just clear these filters and show you. Now it goes back, when you clear everything, it goes back to the whole kit and caboodle here. So don't worry about that. But I want to go back and see what if I want to make sure I did my categories correctly. So I'm going to look and see category 1, apply that, and it'll show me just what I selected as category 1. English Language Arts grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yay! But maybe some of you already caught this. category 1 also includes reading and also includes math. And I forgot to select math. I thought I was done, but I was going too fast, or there was a fire drill or whatever, and I didn't get it done. So now I would need to go back, filter by math. I would select subject for mathematics, and I would select grade levels 1, 2, and 3 and apply. And I would be able to find my first grade reading and math content areas. So that is how you will sort by filters. I'm going to clear all of these off. And it goes back to the whole thing. So you can always go back and save every time you do this and clear them and start over with your next one, 4th through 5th math, 6th through 8th ELAR. You can go ahead and use those filters or not as you wish. So that's a little bit about how to do the eligible teacher tab. So next up, we have the eligible campuses tab, and I'm going to show you about that right here on eligible campuses. Now, keep in mind, there is no campuses here because I'm using testing districts. This is a testing district. It doesn't have any campus. We used it for purposes of showing you how the weighting tab works. However, in real life, you would pick an actual district. You're only going to see your district. So when you click on this tab for your district, it's going to show all of your campuses. So I'm just going to show you what this could look like. I'm going to pick Tatum ISD, and there they are. So on this tab, you pick which campuses you want to include in your system. Some districts include all the campuses. Some districts only include some of their campuses. That's up to you. So if, let's say this, for example, let's just say this district, Tatum ISD, wants to only start with elementary and middle school. They're not ready to start with high school yet. Let's just pretend. So then they would select yes for middle school. They would select yes for elementary school. They would select yes for primary school. And they can either leave this blank and not select high school, or they could go ahead and select no. Either way works. So the point is you can select which campuses you want to use and which campuses you don't want to use. That's completely up to you. So that's a little bit how the eligible campuses tab works. Again, when you click on this, you're not going to see all that stuff that I showed you. You're just going to see your district and your campuses, and then you select yes for the ones that you want to include. Now we're going to move on to the expansion and modification tab. So the expansion modification tab is for districts that are expanding or modifying. If you're a new district, you won't see this tab. And if you're a renewal district, you won't see this tab either. This is only for districts that are doing an expansion and modification application. So we're going to look at this one, weighting tab for, I'm going to pick testing district 6, which is an expansion modification. Give me one moment. Where's my friend 6? There we go. Testing district 6. Okay, so here's testing district 6. Now notice this is already pre-populated. Everything's in there because this district already has an approved system, and their approved system their accepted system includes 1st through 5th reading and math and 6th through 8th reading and math, and that's all they included. They didn't include anything else yet. So they are going to expand, however. They're going to expand, and they want to include a new category. They want to include portfolios. So this is what they already have. And they're going to go to the expansion modification tab over here. And they're going to tell you, this is where you'll tell us what you're doing. It asks you some questions. Are you removing any eligible teaching assignments? This district is not removing any eligible teaching assignments. Are you adding any new eligible teaching assignments? Yes, they want to add new teaching assignments and they want to use portfolios. So they click yes. Will the new teaching assignments use student growth measures that have already been approved? In this case, no, because the new assignments that they want to add, the new teaching assignments, are using portfolios, which they don't currently have approved in their system. So it's going to be using a new growth measure. So they said no. Will they be using student growth measures that have not been previously approved? Yes, they will. They want to add portfolios. So I click yes there. Are they going to change the pre-test, post-test? No. What they're adding is portfolios. So I'm going to click portfolios. And now that will tell us that this district wants to add portfolios. Notice how all the student growth measure tabs are locked because I haven't saved this yet. When I go on, I'm going to have to click through this tab. Adding questions is, are you making changes to currently approved? No. Are you changing the assessment? No. I'm going to click next. In this example, it's going to ask, Are you going to change a teacher observation rubric? You can. This district isn't going to, but some districts want to move from a district-created rubric to a t-test or vice versa. That's fine. If you're doing that, you would click yes, and then you explain what you're doing. In this case, they're not changing their teacher observation rubric, so I'm going to click next. Are they adding or removing campuses? No. Maybe if they were, they would click yes, then you have to, but they're not. They're doing no. Are they changing their spending plan? No. Now I hit this complete button. And when I hit this complete button, notice how the portfolio tab unlocked, because I just said my expansion tab told them that I was going to use portfolios. So now I do portfolios. Everything else is still locked because I wasn't changing it. I'm not changing my teacher observation. I don't have to touch it. I'm not using SLOs. I don't have to touch it. The idea is to make this easier for you so you don't have to do things that you're not changing. You only have to do the things that you actually are changing. And where you tell us that is on this tab. So I'm going to show you one more thing. Let's say you get through this and you're like, you know what? We just had a school board meeting and they want to change the spending tab, but I said, no problem. You just click all the way through what you just did until you get to spending. That's not the spending one. We're not changing that. Keep going. We're not changing that. Keep going. Spending. Oh, now I'm going to change it to yes. So now I'm changing my spending plan. You would explain here, you can't just put test. I put test. You can't put test. You explain what you're going to be changing in your spending plan. Click that magic complete button, and now the spending tab unlocks because you are now going to change the spending tab. And even if after the board meeting they decide not to change it after, well, guess what? You can still change it back. It's so much fun. You just have to click through this, and you click through this. You keep going till you get to the spending one, and you change it back to no, complete. And now it relocks spending and you don't have to do it. So you guys have choices. Things happen. Board members change. We know how it is. You have flexibility in the expansion modification tab. In the expansion modification application, this tab is your new best friend. You can do all kinds of things. You can undo them. Whenever you're finally done, then you can submit. So that's a little bit about the expansion modification tab. And finally, we are going to talk about the renewal tab. So again, not all of you are renewal districts. There's only about 48 of you in the state at the moment. But next year or the year after that or year after that, eventually everyone's going to be renewal districts. So we're going to just walk you through what that one looks like. Now, this one, I think I'm going to have to log out of my, let's see if it'll let me do renewal. Nope, it won't. Okay, so I'm going to log out of, I'm going to pick this testing district. So I can get to the renewal. Again, you won't have to do this because it'll just show you what you're allowed to have. Oops. Okay, so now I'm going to pick a renewal application, and I'm going to pick my friend testing district 9, which is a renewal test district. There we go. Okay, so now you see on their waiting tab, everything's there. Their currently accepted system is already pre-populated what they did. It's currently approved. So currently in this particular example, they included 4 through 8 reading and math, English 1, English 2, and Algebra 1, and they're using the previous year star and star transition tables. They also included pre-K using Circle with district created growth targets. They're using kindergarten, TextKia as the pre-test, TextKia as the post-test, and district created growth targets. And they're using 1st through 3rd reading and math with iStation. So that's what they currently have. So now this district wants to add. So we're going to click, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to add a new teaching category. And this time I'm going to add CTE and our languages other than English and fine arts. So that's what this district wants to do as part of their renewal. That's what they're going to add. And they're going to use, let's say they're using the Marzano just for fun. And let's make that 50%. And they want to add SLOs this time. Let's try SLOs. They're going to add SLOs at 50%. Okay, so I didn't mean to add 2 new. I'm just going to add 1 new. Okay, so now I added this teaching category, CTE, languages other than English, fine arts, using Marzano at 50%. Sorry, it was Danielson, not Marzano. Danielson at 50% and SLOs at 50%. So now I'm going to click save, and I just added a new category. So that's how I would add that. And then so on the renewal, you're adding your new categories and unlocks based on the weighting tab. So since I just added SLOs, notice how the SLO tab is unlocked. Everything else is still locked because I'm not adding it. The only thing I'm adding in this example for my renewal is just CTE, world languages, and fine arts using an SLO system. There's also a renewal tab. So I'm going to go to the renewal tab, and the renewal tab is where you tell us, based on your history, looking at your data, looking at your data validation reports that you've had over the years, what do you find is something that you think needs improvement? So I just did an example for this one. In this particular renewal district, they found that they have kind of an issue between the alignment of their student growth scores and their teacher observation scores. They found that particularly on some campuses, they had teacher observation scores that were up here, but the student growth was down here. It didn't match. They also had the opposite problem where they had really high student growth, but the teacher observation, their teacher scores were low. It didn't sync. So they're like, okay, we know we have an issue with that. We want to get better with that. That aligns to data check number 1. If you're not familiar with all the data validation checks, there's tons of resources on that. You can find them in the share file. I encourage you to check those out. But in this case, that aligns to data check number 1. And then they explain what they're going to do to improve it. So in this case, they want to have ESCs conduct calibration walkthroughs alongside their appraisers, just for practice, not evaluative, just to get their appraisers better at aligning so that they can score within 1 point of each other with valid and aligned evidence. So that's an example of what they want to do to improve an issue that they found to be an issue for their district. So you will select whatever yours are. You can't put test. I can put test. You could not put test, but you play with it. You get to say what your areas of improvement are based on your data and your analysis and how you want to address it. You also let us know which stakeholders you consulted to get that information, to decide what you're going to do for your renewal. You can explain how you engage stakeholders. You can explain how you got feedback from stakeholders, and how did you not just get feedback, but how did you implement the feedback that you got. So this example, they got CTE, world language and fine arts teachers. They all agree they want to use a portfolio system. And so what this district is doing to implement that is to actually use the portfolio system, which is why we just added that on the weighting tab. So that's how the renewal tab works for part A. There's also a part B where you tell us what you're going to do. So when you look based on your data, you also get to add or remove teaching assignments. They want to add new teaching assignments. In this case, it's the CTE, world languages and fine arts teacher. Are you making any other changes? No, in this case, you answer these questions accordingly. This one's really important. I like number 5. It's how can TA support your district to expand? So 4 is about, if you're not yet having all of your teachers eligible, why is that? What are the barriers? We want to know that because we want to get to the point where over the years, really everyone can be eligible. And so this district said, well, the barrier for us is it takes time. It takes time to train teachers and appraisers on how to implement valid and reliable growth measures. If it's a new SLO system or a new portfolio system, that takes time. And so what they asked for is some exemplar portfolios that they can just use as they develop their own portfolio system. And so good news there, we have a brand new statewide hub for SLOs and portfolios, and they're doing just that because we've heard this before. People want some exemplar SLOs, exemplar portfolios that they can use. And so there's lots of that in the works right now. But this is where you would explain what barriers does your district have to including all of your teachers and how can we help? We want to be able to help you get to where all your teachers can be eligible. So that is the renewal tab. Now we're going to move on and talk about resources. So we have a lot of resources that you can use. The first one is the system application scoring rubric. The scoring rubric is just what it says. It explains exactly what the scoring team will be looking for in your answers. You know exactly what you have to do to get full readiness and be accepted in every single aspect of this application. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. The scoring rubric looks like this. So it's for all application types. They all use the same one. And you can see there's a weighting tab. It tells you what's required for full readiness. There's stuff on the teacher observation tab, what that requires. Every student growth measure has its own. We're not going to go through the whole thing today. This is an excellent resource. I highly recommend you download it and use it. For today, we're going to hone in on part D of the teacher observation tab, just for practice. So you can either download it or you can just follow along on the screen, whichever you prefer. Find that teacher observation tab part and look at part D of that teacher observation part. And even more specifically, we're honing in on this third bullet point here in part D, which is about how do districts explain when they have lack of appraiser calibration and skew, both in terms of the ratings that they use and in the evidence for those ratings. So that's what we're going to look at, which is on this slide. The scoring design, like I mentioned, is for full readiness, showing you what it looks like to have a clear answer. It's designed so that you can score your own answers. You can read your answer, look at that scoring rubric and decide, do we have the stuff that we're supposed to have in this answer? Are we missing something? It's designed that you can use it as a real tool. Bullet points, very specific requirements. It includes information on both statutory and non-statutory components. So here's an example. We're going to look at, like I said, at teacher observation, part D. And we're going to read the full raise criteria for this third bullet point. You can just follow along on the screen or you can follow along on the document. That's up to you. So we're looking at how does the district explain how they address lack of appraiser calibration and skew in both ratings, skew in ratings, and also skew if their evidence is not the same. So we're not just looking at ratings, we're looking at ratings and the aligned evidence for those ratings. So here's an example. This is what we're really focusing in on. Here's a district answer from Marigold ISD. So they said, when our district identifies skew in its teacher appraiser ratings on t-tests, we work with appraisers on each campus to practice what calibration on scores looks like. We do joint walkthroughs so we can see how each appraiser rates a teacher on specific dimensions, and we can work through any anomalies in scoring. So that's their answer. Your task is to see, this will be a poll, based on what the scoring rubric is looking for, would this answer meet full readiness or not? So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds, read over the answer, read over what you're looking for in the answer, and then we're going to give you a poll whether this would be scored at full readiness or not. So there's the poll. You get to say yes or no. You see some results coming in there. Give it another maybe 10 seconds. Get your answer in. Okay, looks like we got about 60% of you who responded. And we got, wow, it's neck and neck. This is a great example. So, this is just a trick question, to be honest. So the answer to this is actually no, it does not meet full readiness. However, it gives a beautiful answer for part A, the ratings piece. They talk about ratings. They have a system, joint walkthroughs. They want to work through any anomalies in scoring. Notice how it's all about the scoring, but what did they not include? They mentioned nothing about evidence. And for full readiness, they have to include ratings and evidence. So Marigold got this feedback and they fixed it. So now their answer says they're going to talk about calibration on scores, what it looks like when grounded in aligned evidence. Now we see that evidence piece in there. So we can see both the ratings and the evidence used for ratings in order to determine where the gap is. That answer is good. Their first answer was excellent. It just left off half of the prompt. It didn't include any information about the evidence, but it was a really good answer. So those who picked yes, I mean, you're really close because it was an excellent answer. It just didn't include anything about evidence. So now that they fixed it, that would be full readiness and they're good to go with Marigold ISD. Good job, Marigold ISD. So we also have another tool you can use, and it's how to plan for eligible teaching assignments. So some teaching assignments are you're ready to include right off the gate in year one. You're like, you have valid and reliable sources, your teacher's trusted, you're ready to add them year one. Other teaching assignments, you may be like, wow, you know what, we really haven't decided yet that we have a valid assessment or portfolio system or something for some of our teaching contents, and that's okay. So we developed this as a resource. I'm going to show you what this looks like. You get to decide which teaching assignments you already have a valid and reliable student growth measure for, you're ready to include in year one. Which teaching assignments are maybe under development, maybe you're piloting something, maybe you're just now starting to get training, and which ones might you have to plan to think about later on. So here's an example from Maple ISD. Maple ISD is ready to include in year one. They're a new district. They're ready to include K-3 reading because they already use TPRI. They love it. They have valid results. K-3 reading, they're in. They also are really feeling confident. This is a K-8 district. They're feeling really confident using reading and math 4-8 with the STAR transition tables. They're ready to include that in year one. They may consider actually how to use the statewide VAM data going forward. So they may change that, but they're right now, as of today, they're ready to use this right now. They're good to go. Now you see these other teaching assignments, social studies, world languages, science, and PE. They're not ready yet, but they're training this year. They are training this year on Texas SLOs. They want to pilot it for a year, make sure they get their sea legs under them, and then they're going to add it to their system next year. So these will be included in year two, not in year one. And then finally, K-8 music, art, and technology. They're just beginning to talk about portfolios. They think that's what they want to do. They haven't had any training yet. They haven't piloted anything yet. So they're in the beginning stages. So they want to explore it this year and maybe pilot it next year and add to the system in 26, 27. So this is just one example of how you can pre-plan. In this example, all these teachers know that they're not going to be included in year one, but they also know because they're not ready yet. And they know that they will be included in year 2 or 3. So down the road, getting to this idea where more and more teachers are included over time, it doesn't have to be every single teaching assignment in year 1. That's up to you guys. It's a totally local decision. I just wanted to let you know that resources out there for you to plan what you're ready to do in year 1, year 2, year 3, so your stakeholders can see what you're thinking about in terms of expansion. So for some next steps, the first next step is to finalize your weighting plan, your weighting tab. So deciding which eligible teaching assignments you are going to include in year 1. What weight do you want to use for your teacher observation rubric? What student growth measures do you want to use? What weight should those be at? Do you want to include optional components or not? All of those decisions, you really need to be thinking about that, having conversations with your stakeholders so you can finalize what your weighting tab will look like. Also important as a next step is to access the portal application. I mentioned that will go live tomorrow. You will get an email from TTU to the contact we have on record for you. If you don't know who that is, we need to change it. You can email TTU like I mentioned earlier. So accessing the portal is the next big step. Then, as we mentioned, complete all the required tabs. Not every district has to complete every tab, just the ones that you unlock by telling us what you want to do. So making sure the required ones you actually do complete. And then finally, next step, don't forget this one, you have to submit it. It's due by April 15th at 11:59 p.m. And you submit it just on that portal by clicking submit button. So that should be something that you have ease in doing. We really hope that portal experience is easy for you. One thing I want to note is that we do have planning templates. Only one person has actually access to the actual portal itself, but we have planning templates that are available in Excel. If you want to have multiple people working at the same time and then transfer the answers from Excel to the portal, you can do that if you want, or you can just work it in the portal and skip the Excel if you want. That's totally up to you. Just wanted to flag that if you are using those planning templates in Excel, that will not take the place of the actual portal application. You have to submit the application in the portal itself, but you can use the planning templates in Excel just to get there, have a practice session, have a kind of a rough draft, and then cut and paste into the portal whenever you're ready. That's an option you can use if you want to, just flagging that if you do choose that, it does not take the place of the portal application itself. So with that, I would love to have your feedback on what was helpful, what you would like to see more of, what you wish we covered but didn't. And we have two more really important supports that I'm going to save for the last. So I'm going to take about 2 minutes right now for you guys to do the survey for us. Please do complete that if you haven't yet, but we wanted to point out a couple more resources. ESC support is available near you. All 20 ESCs have specific staff who are just designated to support with TIA. There is a list of every single contact on there, who the contact is for your ESC. You can click on that link and it'll show you who they are, what their email address is. You can reach out to them for support with your TIA application and your specific regions. That's really exciting. New that every single ESC has specific staff dedicated to TIA. In some cases, they have more than one person dedicated, so it just depends on your region, but please do reach out to your local ESC if you would like some support with TIA. So that's an exciting new addition we're happy to announce. And finally, we have a lot of upcoming technical assistance. There'll be sessions similar to this. I'm going to start with the office hours here. Office hours session, there's a whole bunch of them. As you can see, these are all live links. You can click on them once you get this deck. They're also all available on the full calendar, which is in the district share file. So office hours are designed, if you haven't been yet, to just be a place where you come and ask questions. What application questions do you have? What student growth measure questions do you have? Any kind of questions. Our whole staff is there on standby to just answer your questions. You can come and you can go. You can stay for 5 minutes, ask your questions and leave. You can stay for the whole time and see what other districts are asking, what other questions might help me. It's up to you. You can come to them or not. They're optional, but we encourage you to attend. Maybe you want to spend some time with the portal playing around with it first and then come to one a little later on. Totally up to you. We have a whole bunch of them scheduled between now and the application deadline. We also have actual presentations, not just question and answer, but presentations, one on data submission and validation. I mentioned about the data validation checks. If you would like to learn more about what does data submission look like? What do I actually have to submit? And what are these validation checks of which you speak? If you want to know anything about that, highly encourage you to attend on February 5th from 9:30 to 10:30. And we also have one on how to designate. What exactly do you do as you consider how to put forth which teachers for designation? So that will be on February 13th. So we have several upcoming sessions for you, as well as many, many office hours here designed to support you and hopefully have you be as successful as possible with your TI application, regardless of whether it's a new one, an expansion one, or a renewal. We wish you all great success with that. That is all we have for you this afternoon. Thank you for your time and your attention and your polls. Really, really helpful. I appreciate all your time. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and good luck. We hope to hear from you soon, and we hope to see you at office hours coming soon. Thanks for all the love, y'all.